Back, back as promised. Hello, welcome to Health Matters with Dr. Ball. I told you I'll be talking about uh, that fishy smell. That fishy smell is having to deal with bacterial vaginosis. Bacterial vaginosis affects some 70% of women at some point in their lifetime. 70% of women. And 50% of African American women struggle with this, and about 32% Latino or Hispanic community. For whatever reason, the statistics are broken down with ethnicities. There you have it. Now, there's been some debate as to whether bacterial vaginosis is actually a sexual transmitted infection or not. And what caused this theory to gain traction is because there's never been a virgin with bacterial vaginosis. Now, what causes it? Really, it boils down to pH. Yeah, something as simple as a woman's pH, her vaginal pH to be more specific. And when that pH is altered, there are certain bacteria that don't normally grow, are able to grow and proliferate and cause this problem. Gardnerella, to be specific, is the name. And Gardnerella will cause a microfilm along the walls of the vagina, causing a discharge and causing that infamous fishy smell. Now, many of women struggle with it. They try medicines. They end up getting it. They try suppositories and they still get it. They try pills and they get it. And it all boils down to having the right vaginal pH. Look at it like this. You've seen pools before, crystal blue, nice, fresh smell, make you just want to dive in it. It just looks and smells so good and clear and pure. And if you ever had a pool before, you know that one day of rain, one day of a thunderstorm, or even a sprinkle, and you walk out there the next day and it begins to look a little murky. You look at the subsequent days and it looks even worse. And before you know it, it's green. You can't see through to the bottom. And it has a odor. What caused that is the rain raised the pH in the pool. And in doing so, it allowed things to grow in there that don't normally grow. Algae. We see that green stain from algae that sets up residence in the pool. So what do we have to do? We have to shock it. Yeah, we have to shock the pool, dump a lot of acid in it to bring the pH down, and then clean it up and make it look nice again. Well, that's somewhat similar to the vaginal floor. It has a sweet spot of less than 4 pH. A pH of 4, somewhere around the 3 range. A pH of greater than 4.5, and you're going to have trouble. And many of women have tried all kinds of things to get their pH right. Vinegar douche. One patient mentioned using boric acid. And I'm definitely not trying to insinuate using chlorine tablets, okay? I'm just using that as an analogy that when the pH is off, things can happen. Now, what sets it off? Well, did you know that the male's semen pH is at about an 8 to 9, sometimes even 10? That's at the other end of the spectrum. So, a woman who's engaging in sexual activity with her partner, and when during the ejaculation and semen enters the vaginal floor, that pH of the woman, say it's around 4, that semen of the man, say it's around 9, well, that 9 is going to slowly raise that pH up. And then after a while, it's at a 5. It's at a 5.5, and Gardnerella will begin to proliferate, and then you would have bacterial vaginosis. The vaginal flora has a good bacteria in it called lactobacilli, and the lactobacilli produces lactic acid, and that's what keeps that acidic nature. But when that nature is no longer acidic, other bacteria and anaerobes can grow and take over, and then the lactobacilli, no matter how much lactic acid it pumps out, it is rendered basically ineffective in an environment overwhelmed by a higher pH. Something else that can alter it is antibiotics. You have to take antibiotics for something. You have to take it for a prolonged amount of time. And next thing you know, the antibiotics kill off this good bacteria, and you notice that you have this peculiar odor, this grayish discharge, and you don't like it. And so you run to the doctor, and he suggests starting on a different antibiotic to rid you of this bacterial vaginosis. But say you had to take the antibiotic that you were on previously for 2 weeks, and he didn't know that. And so he gives you an antibiotic for bacterial vaginosis only for 7 days. Well, guess what? It'll seem to get better, but since you're taking the other antibiotic for 2 weeks, it'll come right back. Or let's say you're new in a relationship, or you and your significant other are trying to have a baby. And so you are engaging in sexual intercourse frequent and often with the attempt of trying to have a child. Well, that semen is like the rain on that nice, fresh blue pool. It's going to eventually change the pH and alter the biosystem, if you will, of the vaginal flora and predispose you to it. A woman who is real excessive with use of soaps. Well, soaps are not acidic. Soaps are basic or alkaline, if you would. And doing that with regularity, being excessively clean or extremely clean, can predispose you to also getting bacterial vaginosis. And so you got all these plethora of ways that you can end up getting this dreaded infection that makes you eventually want to throw your hands up in the air, because every time you think you're over it, here it comes back again. Now, what can be done about it? Well, I'm not an advocate of this boric acid, even though this one patient swears by it. And again, the pool analogy was no more than a pool analogy. I'm not advocating inserting chlorine pellets to try to bring your pH down. Believe it or not, 30 to 40% of bacterial vaginosis your body can get rid of on its own just by simply allowing things to normalize. The lactobacilli will continue putting out lactic acid, which will continue to drive the pH down, and eventually the environment will be conducive for a more healthier vaginal flora and not conducive for overproduction of some of these other bacteria that poses a problem and causes a problem. If you do need to use an antibiotic, Flagyl, metronidazole is the primary one, and sometimes you need to use clindamycin. Either of those can be taken in tablet form or actual suppositories or gels directly into the vagina. Now, have some interesting information with regard to this. Strangely enough, and this is based on decades of study, there's a higher percentage of bacterial vaginosis with sexual intimacy between two women. Now, it's unknown if that's because of instrumentation of devices spread between the two or by other means. But the statistics show there is just a higher percentage amongst that sexual group. Also, having bacterial vaginosis puts you at increased risk of being more vulnerable to contract sexual transmitted infections, including HIV. And the theory is because it causes friability of the linings of the vagina, the vaginal walls. And with that breakdown, that protective barrier, you now are subject to being able to easily contract other types of infection, primarily sexual transmitted infections that you may not normally would get because the vaginal flora is set up in such a way to protect itself from infection by having a lower pH. Interestingly, on another level, so we talk about being fearfully and wonderfully made, if I can go there, and how things are set up even on the microscopic level that we aren't even aware of. So you got a hostile environment, if you would. You got a vaginal flora with a pH of 4. You have in the issue of procreation, you have a male with semen of a pH of 8 or 9. Now, who did that? To where it takes the man's semen to neutralize the hostile, if you would, or the protective environment of the vaginal flora, so that sperm can have an environment that enables their survival so that they can make it to the ovum and initiate procreation. Yeah. So it's almost like a survival of the fittest, because only the strongest, the most healthiest, the most mobile sperm will be able to get through that semen with its alkaline pH to avoid being submersed, if you would, in a flora of 4.5 or lower, to make it up into the cervix and into the ovum, or to the ovum or the egg unscathed. a lot of them going to drown in the acid, but only the strongest will survive and make it to the ovum. Yeah. Some things are just by a higher power designed for our benefit, and we don't even know it. So, fishy smell, the diagnosis is normally made. There's something called a whiff test. The doctor smears some of the fluid on a slide. He puts a couple of drops of alkaline liquid on it, and it will create a fishy smell. It's called a whiff test. The other is to take some, smear it, look under the slide, and you'll see something called clue cells. And clue cells are simply epithelial cells from the cervix with some bacilli rods attached to it. That's the Gardnerella species that's causing the bacterial vaginosis. The other is the discharge and its characteristic viscosity or appearance, a grayish light color. And normally you need, if you want to be technical, to meet the criteria of calling it bacterial vaginosis, you need at least two of those. You need the whiff test, you need the clue cells, and sometimes they even go further and they do a gram stain, and things of that nature. And of course, ultimately, you can culture and see what grows out. But in medicine, in ER medicine, or in an office practice, normally an examination by a skilled physician is enough to be able to determine, yeah, this is bacterial vaginosis. But they normally send it off and they'll see those classic clue cells and say, yeah, that's exactly what it is. They script you Flagyl, or they script you clindamycin, but just understand that while that may treat it, if some of those other things in the background is going on, like you're on another antibiotic, unbeknownst to the physician, or you're in, baby making mode, as I mentioned earlier. And so there is a lot of sexual intercourse where there is a lot of ejaculation. So there's a lot of semen. You can get treated all you want to. It'll go away, but the semen is going to continue to neutralize the pH and cause the Gardnerella to proliferate. Excessive soap washing. Soap is alkaline, so it can do it also. And then there's the theory, and some of it is factual, that they have found Gardnerella colonizing or growing in men's semen and in their distal urethra. So are men giving it to you? Remember, I haven't found any cases of a virgin woman with bacterial vaginosis. Just something to think about. I ain't trying to start nothing, but it's just something to think about. In your efforts and your attempts to try to not be caught in that special moment, having to feel uncomfortable because something smells awfully fishy. So that's that. That's 24 minutes or so on this subject. Last time I spoke, you guys chose to comment afterwards. And that's fine. The number that you can always call, you can always leave a message. It's always available. Is the 888-530-6522. That's 888-530-6522. You can leave a message of a question or comment. The next show, I'll address that question or comment if it's something that is meant for me to expound upon publicly. If it's someone with some type of situation, an illness that you've overcome, an illness that you're struggling with, you want to share, you want to talk about it, I'll share the platform with you. We can come on together jointly, and it'll be somewhat of an impromptu interview about the process that you're going through with your illness or your recovery. You may have a gripe, you may have a health hype that you want to shout about and be thankful about, and you want the whole world to know about. This is your place. But until next time, this is Dr. Ball with Health Matters, and I'll see you again.